Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I want to discuss a topic that I find really fascinating, and that is movies that legitimately upset you. So I recently discussed disturbing movies, my thoughts on disturbing movies. I thought it was a really good experience explaining that, but something else that I wanted to touch on is the fact that just because someone finds a movie disturbing, particularly disturbing, doesn't mean that it's also going to disturb someone else, because everyone has different thresholds, different topics that people find upsetting. And that genuinely fascinates me. For instance, I've seen some horror films, some particularly strong ones, with some people, but then movies that I'd consider to be particularly tame, for whatever reason, will actually trigger them. And I'm always fascinated to try to understand why, what was it specifically that upset them, to get down to the nitty gritty so that I can kind of avoid upsetting them again in the future, because I'm actually quite bad at figuring out what'll upset people. I don't quite get it myself. But as part of that, I thought it might also be interesting to share my own experience of actually finding a couple of horror movies a bit too much for me. Movies that genuinely did upset me, and I'll try to explain why. It's specific aspects of these films. But keep in mind that I've seen, and I haven't seen the most extreme of stuff, but I've seen Cannibal Holocaust, I've seen a whole bunch of new French extremity movies. I just recently watched Solo, or the 120 Days of Sodom. Some pretty intense movies, but specifically these movies that upset me, and I will explain why. So first off, we have one that I'm sure a lot of people will be very surprised to see, and I'll explain why. And that movie is Drag Me to Hell. Now, Drag Me to Hell was a movie that I was quite interested in watching, specifically because it was from Sam Raimi, the guy who did the Evil Dead movies. And also, actually, this is quite important to mention, is that for this movie specifically, I am going to have to put in a minor spoiler because I need to talk about a specific scene. So if you want to watch this movie with no spoilers whatsoever, then you will probably need to specifically skip me talking about this particular movie. But I think the other movie that I have lined up is part of the basic premise of the movie that kind of upset me a bit, so I think that one will be fine. But regardless, getting back to Drag Me to Hell, got great reviews, and so I was super excited to watch the movie, and I was enjoying it as I was watching it. But then we got to a particular scene. So our main character, she's told that she has to sacrifice something in order to transfer the curse to this creature and then get rid of it. So she needs to find something to sacrifice. Now, something that's been established in this movie up to this point is the fact that she has a cat at home. And she takes care of the cat. She does seem to love the cat, although based on what she does next, I do have to question that. But she returns home. We hear her calling over the cat. We don't actually see the cat. She's holding a knife. And the cat comes over. Again, we don't see it. And she ends up stabbing the cat to death. And it's clear that she didn't kill it in the first go, that she takes multiple stabs in order to kill the cat. And I was genuinely upset when I saw it. I kept watching the movie, and I did end up finishing it, but it's a movie that I actually haven't gone back to at all. I've only ever seen this movie once, just because of that specific scene. And I was trying to figure out why. What was it about this scene in particular that upset me? And it literally took me years to try to figure out. Because again, I've watched some extreme movies. Like, for instance, Cannibal Holocaust has some real animal deaths in it on screen. And, while it wasn't particularly pleasant to look at, I wasn't overly bothered by it. But what was it about this cat situation in Drag Me to Hell that actually upset me? And after a long process of thinking about it, about mulling it over, etc., I've come to a conclusion that I think is probably correct. Again, I'm not 100%, but I think what ended up upsetting me was that she betrayed this cat. So this cat was clearly living with her for a good while, clearly was quite affectionate of her, clearly could not ever imagine that she would ever hurt it. And, of course, she calls him over, and of course I'm thinking, like, from the cat's perspective, like, oh, she's back, amazing. By the way, I think it also helps to know that I have a bunch of cats myself, and they do react quite a bit like that. Whenever I show up, they all come running to me, and super cute. And she ends up stabbing it to death, painfully, clearly, because she doesn't kill it in the first go. And I just think to myself that what I found particularly upsetting about it was the fact that she betrayed it, about the fact that this cat felt secure and safe in her home, and then she ruined it. She stabbed it to death painfully. And I just found that really, really upsetting to me. I will of course be curious to know what other people think about that scene, but that's how I reacted to that scene, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't gone back to this movie. Probably the only major reason. But regardless, I do think that is quite fascinating, and it's certainly fascinating when I explain it to people, because they expect me to be able to process everything at this point in terms of horror content, and it's clear from this movie I cannot. Like, there is some lines that I will be upset by. And speaking of lines that I'll be upset by, the next movie is one that, again, a certain aspect of the movie did upset me. Now, since then, I've become able to more process this film better. But this movie that I'm talking about is The Babadook. Now, what is it about The Babadook that upset me? And it's actually the kid in this movie. So, for those of you who are unaware, if you follow my channel where I cover anime and manga, you may already know, but I don't believe I've mentioned it all on this channel, that I am autistic. I have Asperger's syndrome. And as you can imagine, it's made a lot of aspects of my life quite difficult. I do believe that I'm a better person for it, I genuinely do. But the kid in this movie, for the first half of the movie, really reminded me of myself as a kid. And it's something that I think about a lot in my life. About all of those awkward social situations where I reacted badly, that I embarrassed my parents, that I misunderstood things and got upset, etc., etc. There's a lot of bad memories from my childhood. And this movie, seeing this kid and the way he kind of reacted to the world, really brought that back. And when I first saw the movie, again, it really dragged down the experience for me. Now, the second half of the movie I was able to process much better, and in fact, since then, I have actually gone back to this movie and I'm able to process that first half in a much more positively now. But even so, I will always remember that I was actually quite distressed watching the first half of this movie, just because this kid reminded me so much of myself. And again, I think that's something that's actually going to affect everyone, personal experience. Like, if you've had a bad experience with a certain topic and then you come across it in media, you're probably going to be upset. But of course, a lot of people, their kind of trauma, you won't know about until they actually tell you. So that does make kind of identifying movies tricky sometimes. But anyway, so those two movies, those are two horror movies that I can think of, at least. These are the only ones I can recall that actually upset me. And I think that's quite fascinating given the other types of movies that I've seen. I've seen a lot of messed up stuff, and yet it was these two movies that have been rated 15s, by the way, by the BBFC, that actually got under my skin. So anyway, I think that's a fascinating topic to kind of discuss. You know, what is it that upsets people? In particular, yourself, of course. So for instance, have you guys seen any movie, regardless of whether it's horror or not, in which you saw a scene that actually upset you, that got under your skin, that kind of made you want to stop watching the movie, and kind of left you thinking about it afterwards in a very kind of negative manner? What are your thoughts on those two experiences that I had? Do you find them fascinating? Do you not? It could be boring to some people, I guess. But I myself find it quite fascinating given what else I've seen. Of course, if you have any other information on this topic, please leave it in the comments below. And of course, if you want to support the channel, I would encourage you to use my Amazon affiliate links in the description below. When you purchase horror through those affiliate links, not only supporting me, not only supporting the channel, but you're also supporting the horror industry. So I'd highly encourage you to purchase your horror through those affiliate links. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.